Wealth isn't always what you can see. A TE learned this the hard way in one unforgettable moment. It was a typical Saturday afternoon in Beverly Hills, and the streets were buzzing with people hopping in and out of luxury stores. The boutique opulent lane sat on the corner of the boulevard like a beacon for the wealthy and those who aspired to look the part. Inside, a faint melody of smooth jazz played softly over the speakers, and the air smelled faint of expensive leather and fresh jasmine. The staff, polished and poised, attended to their well-dressed clientele with practiced smiles. Among the shoppers was Tyler, a 17-year-old who carried himself with a kind of cocky swagger that only came from knowing you could get whatever you wanted with a tap of your phone. His outfit screamed wealth: white Balenciaga sneakers, a Gucci hoodie, and a gold chain that glinted under the store's chandelier. Tyler wasn't alone. Flanking him were his two best friends, Mason and Ethan, equally flashy in their designer outfits. The trio sauntered through the store, their voices louder than necessary, as they laughed and commented on the merchandise. "Look at this jacket," Tyler said, holding up a black leather piece, tagged at $6,000. "This is low-key basic. I'd only wear it to the gym." Mason snorted. $6,000 for that? They'd have to pay me to wear it." The sales associate nearby laughed nervously, unsure whether to join in or not, but amidst the laughter and energy, one figure stood out, or rather didn't stand out at all, near the corner of the store. An older black man quietly examined a display of watches. He wore a simple blue button-down, neatly pressed slacks and scuffed brown loafers that had clearly seen better days. He moved slowly, running a hand over his graying beard as he studied the tags. Tyler noticed him almost immediately. His smirk widened, and he elbowed Mason. "Yo, check it out," he whispered, gesturing discreetly toward the man. "What he doing in here? Think he's lost or something?" Mason chuckled. "For real, though. What's he even going to buy a belt to?" The three boys tried to keep their voices low, but the way they snicked had made it obvious that they were talking about him. The man, still focused on the watches, didn't even glance their way, but Tyler wasn't done with his confidence. At an all-time high, he decided to put on a show for his friends. He walked a little closer to the man, just enough to make his presence felt. "Excuse me," Tyler said loudly, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "Do you, need help finding the clearance rack or something?" Mason and Ethan burst out laughing, and even a couple of other shoppers turned to see what was happening. The man, however, stayed silent. He didn't even look up. Tyler's grin faltered slightly, but he wasn't about to back down. "I mean, it's cool, bro. Not everyone can afford this stuff. You've got to work up to it, you know." His friends roared again, their laughter echoing through the boutique. A few customers exchanged uncomfortable glances, while one of the sales associates looked as though she might intervene, but no one said a word. The man finally straightened up and turned to face Tyler. His expression was calm, his eyes steady. He wasn't angry or defensive, just composed. "You done?" the man asked quietly, his voice firm but not confrontational. For a moment, Tyler didn't know how to respond. He hadn't expected the man to say anything. But before he could come up with another quip, the man turned away and walked toward the front of the store. The silence that followed was deafening, but Tyler's ego wouldn't let it go, and that's when things started to take an unexpected turn. Tyler watched the older man walk away with a mixture of confusion and irritation. The man's calm response, or lack of one, had robbed him of the dramatic reaction he'd been hoping for. But Tyler wasn't about to let the moment pass without getting the last word. "Man, this dude thinks he's too good to talk to us," Tyler said loudly enough for the entire store to hear. Mason and Ethan chuckled, nudging each other as they watched Tyler puff up his chest like a peacock. The older man, now at the front counter, stood quietly as a sales associate approached him. He leaned over the glass case containing the store's most expensive watches and gestured to one of them. His movements were measured, deliberate, as though he had all the time in the world. Tyler scoffed. "Look at him acting like he's about to buy something. Bro probably doesn't even have a credit card," he muttered, earning another round of laughs from his friends. The boutique's energy had shifted. What had been a luxurious, serene environment was now tense and awkward. A few customers stared at the boys disapprovingly, but no one stepped in. Meanwhile, the sales associates tried their best to pretend nothing was happening. Though the unease on their faces was clear, one shopper, a woman in her 50s with an Hermes bag hanging from her arm, frowned at Tyler. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she muttered under her breath as she walked past. But Tyler just shrugged it off, turning his attention back to the man. "Hey, old man," he called out, his voice laced with mockery. Sure, you're in the right place. There's a thrift store down the street. You might have better luck there." This time, the older man didn't even acknowledge him. He continued speaking softly to the sales associate, who nodded and retrieved a watch from the case. Mason, emboldened by Tyler's antics, chimed in, "Bet he's just asking to see it for fun, like window shopping." But inside, the trio burst into laughter again. Their voices carrying through the boutique. It was the kind of laughter that wasn't just loud, it was designed to humiliate. But not everyone was entertained. A young sales associate with dark curly hair and a name tag that read Rachel finally stepped forward. She had been nervously folding scarves nearby, but now she looked determined. "Excuse me," Rachel said, her tone sharp. "You're disturbing the other customers. I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voices or leave." Tyler raised an eyebrow at her. "Relax. We're just joking. Besides, we're probably your best customers today." He gestured toward his friends, who were all wearing outfits worth more than Rachel's monthly rent. Rachel's cheeks flushed, but she stood her ground. "We value all of our customers here. If you can't be respectful, I'll have to call security, Mason." And Ethan exchanged uneasy glances, but Tyler just laughed. "Security over what? We're not doing anything wrong. You should be thanking us for keeping this place interesting." But as Tyler turned back toward the older man, his grin started to fade. Something about the man's posture, his quiet confidence, made Tyler feel a flicker of doubt. The tension in the room was palpable now, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. The boutique was silent, except for the faint jazz music playing in the background. All eyes were on the older man as he stood calmly at the counter, seemingly unfazed by the scene unfolding behind him. Tyler's taunts, the laughter, even Rachel's confrontation, none of it seemed to shake him. The sales associate at the counter, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, leaned in to speak with the older man. His demeanor shifted the moment he realized the man wasn't here to browse idly. The associate nodded, disappearing into the back room for a moment, and returned with a polished wooden box inside. It was one of the boutique's most exclusive items, a rare Swiss watch with a price tag of $85,000. Tyler, Mason, and Ethan were still watching from a distance, their amusement turning to disbelief. "No way," Mason whispered, his grin faltering. "Hun, not seriously looking at that, right?" Tyler smirked, trying to mask his growing discomfort. "Relax. He's just wasting their time. Dude's probably never even seen that many zeros in his life." But the man's actions told a different story. He examined the watch, carefully tilting it in the light to admire the craftsmanship. Then, without hesitation, he nodded and said something to the sales associate. The associate smiled and replied, "Excellent choice. Sir, let me ring that up for you." A hush fell over the boutique. Customers who had been pretending not to notice the commotion suddenly turned their full attention to the counter. Even the staff, who had been quietly tending to other shoppers, seemed frozen in place. Tyler's confidence wavered. He crossed his arms, leaning toward his friends as if to find solidarity in their reactions. "It's a bluff," he muttered, though his voice lacked its usual bravado. The sales associate began typing on the Regis, his fingers moving quickly as he calculated the total. Meanwhile, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black wallet. He removed a platinum credit card and handed it over without a word. "Platinum?" Ethan whispered, his eyes wide. "You've got to be kidding me." Rachel, still standing near the boys, glanced at them with a look of quiet satisfaction. She didn't say anything, but the slight smirk on her face spoke volumes. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, his early bravado dissolving, as the reality of the situation sank in. The older man wasn't bluffing. He wasn't window shopping. He was about to buy something that cost more than Tyler's entire wardrobe, probably more than his parents' car. The transaction was swift. The associate handed the man his receipt along with the watch in its elegant box. "Thank you, sir." he said with genuine respect. "Enjoy your purchase." The man nodded politely and turned to leave, but not before glancing in Tyler's direction. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that silence an unspoken message passed between them. It wasn't anger, it wasn't triumph, it was something far more powerful: dignity. Tyler stood there frozen as the man walked toward the exit, but the moment wasn't over just yet. As the older man walked toward the boutique's glass doors, the tension in the room was most suffocating. Tyler, Mason, and Ethan exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter now replaced by silence. The other shoppers watched in awe, murmuring among themselves about what they had just witnessed. But just as the man reached the exit, he paused slowly. He turned back around, his gaze sweeping over the boutique. The room fell silent again. The man walked back toward the counter, carrying the weight of someone who had nothing to prove but something important to say. He placed the elegant wooden box on the counter and motioned to the sales associate, who looked confused but quickly returned to his side. "I'll take more," the man said, his voice calm, yet commanding. The sales associate blinked. "More, sir? Yes, show me your top-tier inventory, the watches, the suits, the bags, everything I want, the best you've got." Gasps rippled through the room. Even the most J customers used to wealth and luxury couldn't hide their surprise. This wasn't just a purchase anymore. It was a statement. The associate hurried to fulfill the man's request. Calling over 2 other employees to assist, they began presenting items: tailored suits made from the finest fabrics, limited edition handbags, jewelry sets that sparkled like starlight. The man examined each item with care, occasionally nodding to indicate his approval. Meanwhile, Tyler's face turned a deep shade of red. His friends, usually quick with a joke or comment, were uncharacteristically quiet. They stared at the scene unfolding before them, their earlier arrogance now replaced by an unmistakable mix of shock and embarrassment. Tyler tried to salvage his pride. "He's just showing off," he muttered under his breath, though no one seemed to hear him or care. As the sales associates began ringing up the purchases, the total climbed higher and higher. By the time they finished, the number displayed on the register was staggering. "Your total is $387,000, the associate said, his voice steady, but his hands slightly trembling as he held the receipt. The man pulled out his platinum card again and handed it over without hesitation. The transaction processed smoothly, and the associates carefully packed the items into branded bags, their professionalism unable to hide their astonishment. With his purchases neatly stacked on a trolley, the man prepared to leave once more. But before he did, he turned to face Tyler and his friends directly. This time his voice was louder, cutting through the heavy silence in the room. "Son," he said, addressing Tyler, "you might want to think twice before you judge someone based on what they're wearing. Wealth isn't always something you can see respect on. The other hand should be visible in everyone, no matter who they are or where they're from." The man's words hung in the air like a sharp echo. Tyler's bravado was gone, replaced by a look of pure humiliation. He couldn't meet the man's gaze. The older man turned back to the exit, pushing the trolley himself, despite offers from the staff to assist as the doors closed behind him. The boutique remained eerily quiet. But while the man was gone, the lesson he left behind was just beginning to sink in. The boutique was still, as though time itself had paused. Tyler stood frozen in place, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, but his usual confidence had evaporated. Mason and Ethan stood awkwardly beside him, glancing at one another, their earlier smirks replaced by uneasy frowns. The other shoppers returned to their business, but their whispers lingered, words like disrespectful, entitled, and deserved that floated through the air, piercing Tyler's ego like needles. Rachel, the sales associate, who had confronted the boys earlier, stepped forward again, this time with a calm yet pointed demeanor. "You see what just happened here?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. Tyler looked at her but didn't respond for the first time. He had no witty comeback, no sarcastic remark to toss her way. Rachel continued, "That man didn't just buy a watch or a suit. He showed everyone in this store what class really looks like, and it's not about money, it's about how you treat people. Maybe you should think about that the next time you try to embarrass someone for no reason." Ethan cleared his throat uncomfortably. All right, we get it. Can we just go now? But Tyler didn't move. His gaze had shifted to the spot where the man had stood moments ago. The weight of Rachel's words and the man's pressing down on him. He had never felt so small, and for the first time in a long time he realized his flashy clothes and designer accessories couldn't shield him from the truth. As the trio finally made their way to the exit, Tyler kept his head low. The walk back to their car felt endless, the laughter and swagger that had once defined their group nowhere to be found once inside the car. Mason broke the silence. Man, that was intense. Ethan nodded. Yeah, dude. Straight up dropped almost 400 grand. Like it was nothing. That was crazy, but Tyler didn't say anything. He just stared out the window. The man's words replaying in his mind. Wealth isn't always something you can see respect on. The other hand should be visible in everyone, no matter who they are or where they're from, for the rest of the day. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him had shifted. He replayed every moment of the encounter, from his mocking comments to the man's quiet dignity. And for the first time he saw himself clearly, not as the confident, admired leader of his group, but as a boy who had a lot to learn. The next morning, Tyler woke up with an odd sense of determinati. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, stopping at Rachel's name. He had gotten it after his dad purchased a few items from the boutique a month ago. He hesitated for a moment before sending a simple text. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for yesterday. You were right to his surprise. Rachel replied almost immediately, apology accepted, Laton. Hope you mean it. And he did the lesson that older man had left behind. Didn't just stick with Tyler. It changed him. Sometimes life throws us moments that force us to take a hard look at who we are and who we want to be. It's not about how much money you have or what you wear. It's about how you treat people. The next time you're tempted to judge someone by their appearance or put someone down, think twice. Respect is free, and showing it makes you richer than anything money can buy.